we could not measure longitude. Very important issue if you're a navigator and a sailor. We could not measure longitude until 1760s, 1750s, sometime in the second half of the 18th century. It took the creation of a very precise marine chronometer in order to be able to calculate what your longitude is. Otherwise, in the middle of a stormy night, you could find yourself 300 miles west of where you thought you were and crashing into a coastline. It's a really good thing to know longitude. There was £1 million in the 18th century was a lot of money. There was £1 million British prize for cracking the longitude problem. And it wasn't until the second half of the 18th century that it was solved.
Wow.
So it's weird that on ancient maps, copied from even more ancient source maps, there are precise longitudes, precise relative longitudes. This is one of the things that suggests to me that a civilized... the second thing is those maps show the world as it looked during the last ice age. Thirdly, and most important, they show Antarctica. Our civilization didn't discover Antarctica until 1820. So if I find a map from 1520 showing Antarctica where the map maker informs us that he based his map on much older source maps that were falling to pieces, fall completely apart, he's preserved the information in those maps on his maps, he's copying from older sources, and there is Antarctica. So did they just make it up? That's what the
Why do we still call it Antarctica? That was another thing I was like...
Well, the opposite of the Arctic.
Yeah, but it's
very recent map.
It's like, bro, he called it Antarctica. Why don't you just look at the map? You're going to call it the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we call it Antarctica. They used to call it Terra Australis, the southern land. If you go for the Orontius Phineas map, for example, you'll find a much better reference.
Yeah, I thought that map said Antarctica. That's very good.
Yeah.
Tripped up.
Oh, I actually am really excited that we're talking about Antarctica.
Yeah. Antarctica is an interesting place.
This is my newest rabbit hole.
It's one of those great... You see, there's Antarctica. That's the Orontius Phineas.
To the right?
There's South Africa, and there's Antarctica, and there's the tip of South America, almost touching Antarctica. It's a bit bigger than it is today, but it would have been like that during the last ice age. That's a map from 1531, and what they're saying in the legend is that here in this map I expose regions that neither Eudoxus nor, I forget the names of all the ancient maps, none of them knew about it. They were hidden in darkness, but here they are. Hidden in darkness, I suggest they're hidden in darkness on ancient maps that Orontius Phineas copied from.
Wow.
It's an anomaly that it's sitting there. It's not good enough to say that those map makers just wanted to balance the world, so they put a fantasy continent there, which later turned out to actually be there.
Right.
That's roughly what they're saying now. So that suggests to me a culture that was capable of exploring and mapping the Earth during the last ice age.
Okay, I want to talk about Antarctica. Because I think this is going to be the new obsession. I feel like it's trending super high. Who knows if there's any truth to it, but a friend of ours, who will remain nameless, went there.
Yeah.
Got to go on a cool experience, trip, etc. And he said a couple interesting things. He said the mountains looked eerily pointy and four-sided. He said way more mountainous than he thought it would be. I think the illusion, maybe from looking at maps and watching penguins, is
by the way,
just
you can
this
see
flat...
mountains. You can see mountains on the Orontius Phineas map version.
Oh, is that what the little etchings
around
are?
the edges there?
Interesting.
Those are mountains.
Now, he also said this. He said a couple things. He said there is a pact with every country that has a slice of it that they will not dig or remove any minerals from Antarctica. And he even said that a scientist was there, said to them, World War III will not start until one of these countries breaks that pact. They are clearly protecting or preserving something that may or may not be under, I believe it's 3 miles, Mark was saying earlier, at its thickest of ice. Now, Mark, maybe you should describe the thing that you were saying before about there was a time where Antarctica...
I was reading an article that perhaps 90 million years ago, there was a lush rainforest that is now covered in miles of ice on the Antarctic continent.
Yeah, that's probably true. If you go back that far, you would find that the Earth's climate was very different from how it is today. And there's undoubtedly a time, they found fossils on Antarctica, there's undoubtedly a time when Antarctica was lush and green. The question is, was it lush and green during the lifetime of the human species?
Yes, this is where it gets tricky.
And this is where it gets tricky. The Homo sapiens line descends from a line that goes back about 6 million years, not much further than that, if we accept conventional evolutionary theory. So 6 million years ago, Antarctica is supposed to have been as cold and as frozen as it is today. Now, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods in 1995, which is my first book tracing the possibility of a lost civilization, I was very interested in Antarctica, and I was interested in it because of the work of a previous researcher called Charles Hapgood. Charles Hapgood wrote a number of very important books. One of them is called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which precisely goes into this issue of ancient maps that don't fit our understanding of what the world was, how the world was supposed to be known at that time. And another is called The Path of the Pole. And he proposed a phenomenon that he called Earth crust displacement, whereby from time to time, the entire outer crust of the Earth, like the skin of an orange, might shift, leaving the core of the Earth in place, so that it could shift like. So if you imagine a very loose orange skin, the fruit is inside, it's staying in place, but you're shifting the skin around it. Well, obviously then, if that happens, Antarctica could have been in warmer latitudes and could have been shifted into colder latitudes.
And how often does this happen?
Well, does it happen at all is the first question. I mean, of all the theories I've looked at and supported, this is the one that I've come in for the most criticism for. And I've been much more interested recently in the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis and the notion that that a cataclysm occurred around 12,800 years ago caused by impacts of comet fragments, and we can go into that. But when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, although I was interested in comets, I was more interested in Earth crust displacement. And the standard academic response to that is, look, Antarctica's been frozen for millions of years, and that rules out the whole Earth crust displacement argument. I think that even those who are still researching this field would prefer it to be the mantle rather than the crust of the Earth that moves. Again, it's very technical, that moves in one piece.
But the idea is...
There's an Italian admiral called Flavio Barbiero who wrote an article for my website suggesting that Earth crust displacement could be kicked off by a comet impact where it hits the Earth a glancing blow and causes a shift of this kind taking place. But by and large, I don't argue these days that Antarctica and Earth crust displacement are the mechanism we should be looking at. I'm much more interested in the very solidly scientifically grounded Younger Dryas impact. Back in 1995, when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I was searching around for many possibilities that could have caused a global cataclysm in the range of 12 to 13,000 years ago, because that's what all the astronomy pointed out, 12 to 13,000 years ago. And Hapgood's theory seemed to me a very valuable and useful one. I still won't write it off. I won't dismiss it entirely, but I've shifted in the direction of the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis.